My 25F boyfriend, 30M, hates himself and I don't know what to do. I have been in a relationship with my boyfriend for about 4 years now. He is very sweet, kind, and generous. He makes friends everywhere he goes and will always go out of his way to help other people. He is incredibly supportive of me and my goals. I am close with his family and he is close with my family. We have a house together, and several pets. We share many of the same interests, go places together, trust each other, etc. All of this is, clearly, wonderful. My boyfriend and I both have struggles with mental health. I experience a lot of anxiety and occasionally intense sadness. I'd call it depression, as I don't want to throw a term out that I haven't actually been diagnosed with. In general, though, I think I have more good days than bad, and I become better and better at reminding myself that all feelings are temporary, including negative ones. However badly I'm feeling, I will feel better in some way at some time. My boyfriend does not feel this way at all. He has several mental health struggles which I won't go into detail about. The one I came here to post about is his extremely self-hatred and negativity towards himself. As kind as he is towards other people, he is the exact opposite towards himself. In 4 years of being together, I don't know that I've ever heard him say one positive thing about himself. When I compliment him or say the things that I find so wonderful about him, he either brushes them off sarcastically, if he is in a good mood, or vehemently denies them, tells me I'm wrong, tells me he is a horrible person, etc. For some context, when my boyfriend and I started dating, I was aware that he had struggles with negativity towards himself, but I was not aware the extent of it. About 50% of the time that I'm with him / communicating with him, he is in a very dark place in terms of how he is thinking about himself. Most of the time when I ask how his day is going or how he's feeling, he tells me that he feels awful or terrible. And when I ask why, he responds that it's bad because he is a terrible / awful person and he hates himself. Over the years I've tried to talk through these thoughts with him many times, telling him all of the positive things I see in him and all of the things I've achieved, but he consistently tells me that I'm wrong or that he doesn't see those things at all. He has a therapist, but I honestly don't know that those sessions are helping him at all. If anything, I feel like his self-perception has only gotten worse over the years I have known him. I'm reaching a point where I am utterly overwhelmed with frustration, anger, and deep sadness over seeing him be so cruel to himself so frequently. I don't know what to do. I feel like I have tried every compassionate response I can think of and nothing helps, and some responses just worsen the situation. I feel like he is two separate people, one both a day I fucked up a kind and sweet person and one person who actively wants to just hate and destroy himself. I feel guilty and ashamed for not being able to accept his mental health struggles and wanting him to change when I know that mental health isn't something that you can just shut on or off. But I cannot stand to see him treat himself so poorly. I don't know what to do at this point to cope with my or his feelings. Too long didn't read. My BF aggressively hates himself and I am overwhelmed by feelings of frustration, anger, sadness, and guilt and don't know what to do. 2 things. 1. Ask him how his therapy is going and whether he thinks he will make progress or whether he needs a different approach. Cognitive behavioral therapy might do him some good. 2. Set some ground rules. He can have whatever mental health problems he has, but he needs to learn to stop making them as much of a problem for you. So, if you compliment him, he should stop saying negative things in reply. He can simply say, "Thank you," which is appropriate when someone gives you a compliment. Besides, his negative self-talk is likely making his problems worse, so it's a terrible habit he needs to break. It hurts him and it hurts you, but you really only have the right to object to the "it hurting you" part. If he can't agree to stop replying in a way that is not only mean to himself, but mean to you, then you may need to consider breaking up with him. But hopefully, since you say he's generally nice to others, if you explain that you need him to stop placing this burden on you and respond politely to compliments, he may well be willing to do so. If he's been getting worse in the time he's been with his therapist, maybe suggest he start seeing a different one. It doesn't sound like the one he has now is helping at all. I am the 30M in the same scenario. Every compliment I get feels like a lie. I can see from an observational point of view, my feelings are inaccurate, but from my own perspective I feel self-hatred. Maybe show him this post and let the truth out, or write him a letter to make your feelings clear. If he can find compassion for others, he has the capacity to have it for himself. It helps me to imagine myself for problems from a third person's perspective. Everyone wants you to leave. Bad advice. You are the only one who can decide that. Sounds like he can put in work, so have him do the emotional work he needs to. It could be less difficult than you imagine. I appreciate this perspective. Thank you so much for sharing. I think my biggest difficulty with expressing exactly what I've written here to him is that I feel guilty and ashamed for not being able to accept where he is mentally. I'm afraid he will say, I can't change, this is how I am / have always been, and when I've tried to change in the past I've failed, and I'd what to do if that's the case. To be blunt, you have compassion fatigue and you need to give him an ultimatum that either he goes to see a professional and stop using you as his therapist, or you have to leave the relationship. Edit to add. To be less blunt, I have been him in a similar relationship. I have BPD, and before I was treated I was a self-loathing mess. Nothing was okay. Everything sucked, and most of all me. I was a dark cloud over my boyfriend, and I'm lucky I managed to get myself help before I completely ruined the relationship. It destroyed my boyfriend, and your BF is headed there now too. That's really the only solution here. As much as you want to, you cannot fix this for him. Don't allow this to set up a codependent dynamic between you where you are trying to fix him. Have you considered couples therapy? If he has a therapist who doesn't seem to be helping, maybe he needs a new one. That can take time to sort out, and find one that works for him. I also think a psychiatrist may be able to help. Medication is a tool along with therapy that can help right the ship, so to speak. But back to my original point, couples therapy in addition to his therapist could be helpful for both of you. The conversations you need to have are heavy, and having them in a supportive space where you work together to fix them could be helpful. Your boyfriend may also realize that his therapy isn't productive in its current state by being introduced to a new form of therapy. Ultimately, this is harmful to both of you, and I think adding couples therapy could be massively beneficial so you both feel safe and supported in working through these issues. Couples therapy isn't a last resort, it's a first step toward healing, and it may really help you. We have seen a therapist before, and it definitely was helpful. Through those sessions I was able to get to a place where I no longer feel like I have to make him feel better / happier. So now I'm in a place where I just feel sad and angry to see him be so mean to himself, and guilt over wishing his mental state would change when I know it's not that simple. I really appreciate your response and kind words. Me, M23, angry at my mother, F56, for not deciding to leave my father, M60, earlier, and now it affecting my own life choices. Throw away for privacy reasons. Disclaimer, this is a long one, but please bear with me because I am completely lost. My M23 family has had a long history of being a tragedy throughout my childhood. I am the product of an arranged marriage, migrated to another country from an East Asian cultural background, so a lot of emphasis is placed on family, or at least appearance of family. In reality, my father M60 is very abusive towards my mother F56 and has done multiple things that I would consider to be deal breakers. Control finances completely and try to cut off my mother's finances to preserve outdated views that men should control all the wealth and women should do as they are told, cheat on my mother and give her STDs. Tell her that she has been a detriment to his success and life wherever she has been, while she has been his business partner, working all the hours he has done whilst taking care of me and my sister F25, as well as all household chores are during early childhood, and a lot more double standard / hypocritical things. My mother hasn't left my father because family is deemed to be the most important thing and should be kept together, and because she doesn't earn enough money after my father retired to live securely. But she's getting close to retirement and won't be able to earn money for basic things such as food etc., whilst my father gets most of his food from his relatives. They argue and bicker often, and from my POV, it's my father's outdated views and him being a jerk that cause their fights. My father has many toxic issues with me and my sister as well, but we've learned to completely sideline him and ignore him to the point where he doesn't even bother trying to talk to us. We tried many times to make him see things from our POV and to lessen the burden on my mother, but our cultural upbringing has made my father think he can override our decision and decide that we are wrong simply because we are his children. We've given up on trying to reason with him and make him into a better person. Unfortunately, my mother doesn't ignore my father, and if my father has issues with us, he takes it out on my mother, and while we've told him if he has an issue with us, he can work up the courage to talk to us. When we were smaller children, he used to treat us the same as my mother, but he doesn't do so anymore. I speculate this is because me and my sister pay the bills and my father has spent most of his money, so any infringement he has with us risks his future financial stability. I resolved early on to never end up in the same situation as my mother and to never become my father, and I've long wanted to move out and remove myself from this kind of toxic home life. I'm about to start my PhD and I've earned quite a bit of money from demonstrating at my university's labs/teaching high school kids. I also get enough scholarship and stipend money to live independently, so I'm basically financially covered to move out. My sister is the same as me, having a secure job and savings. She also wants to move out. I've told my mother that I will move out in the near future and she freaked out. She says that I'm basically leaving the family and that she doesn't know how she can live in the same house with my father without my financial and emotional backing. The thing is, I'm angry at her for saying this. Over the past 8 years, I've told her to leave him for her own good, but she's too caught up in that cultural ideal that family is the only thing that matters. I've told her not to reach out to him and just ignore him and sideline him, but she hasn't been willing to do that. My mother is a lovely woman and helps everyone she can, but I'm angry at that. I love her, but I'm angry she's influencing my decision to leave via my guilt. I'm leaving her to my father. I'm just so angry and bitter she didn't listen to me the many times I've told her to leave him, and now it's affecting my life choices. I'm angry at my mother for influencing my decision even though she doesn't mean to. Yes, I know that the one I should be angry at is my father, but years of anger at him and watching him abuse my mother and his inability to be reasoned with, has automatically made me sideline my anger at him because it can't be used constructively. I simply don't know what to do, and even though usually I'm composed and logical about my decisions, these days I'm just so discontent and angry and lost. Please help me. Too long didn't read. I want to move out from my toxic house where my father abuses my mother, but my mother is unintentionally affecting my decision through my guilt that I'm leaving her there. I'm angry and lost, and I have no clue what to do or how to deal with my emotions. I feel like you don't understand the mom. She was conditioned from birth to believe she was a slave to a man. First her father, then her husband. She is her husband's slave, and the idea she could have free will is probably incomprehensible. You want her to leave, but that would go against an entire lifetime of brainwashing. She probably needs a man at this point to tell her what to do and how, because she will feel lost without the control. I think you need to accept that mom is never leaving. What you want is not possible for your mom to do. You shouldn't be angry, you should feel pity for her. I'm a third culture kid like you from a similar background. It's conditioning. You couldn't have said it any better. I, 29F, don't know what to do about messages from a 30M, former coworker, who is differently abled. Just to be upfront, I am neurotypical, and if I use incorrect words in this post to describe the other person involved, I am very sorry and would like to be corrected. If you are willing to invest that energy. BG, I, 29F, worked in an entertainment center as a food server from January 2018 to September 2018. I usually stick around places longer, but this restaurant had the rudest clientele I've ever dealt with, and I couldn't take it anymore. Lol. This place hired a fair amount of differently abled, both physically and mentally, people to work as hosts/concierges. One of them was a man, 30M, whom I'll refer to as Dave. I wasn't 100% sure what made Dave an neurotypical, exactly, but I do know that he is about 15 years old mentally. We chatted a fair bit during downtime, mostly about movies, since we both loved them. When I left the center in September, I accepted a friend request from him on Facebook, along with a bunch of my other co-workers, so that I could keep in touch with them. Dave sent me a Facebook message immediately after, saying that I was the sweetest girl he'd ever met and gave me his phone number, if I ever needed anything. I was really touched by this, thanked him, and said I hoped I'd get to visit soon so I could say hi to everyone. I figured that was the best way to end this professional relationship, let him know that I enjoyed working with him and would like to see him and all of our coworkers again sometime. For the past 2+ years, he's been pretty consistently messaging me on Facebook, asking how I'm doing and how everything's going. I usually use FB on my phone and I forget to open up my Messenger app a lot, so I miss a lot of these messages / forget to respond to them in a proper amount of time. Often, when I do open Messenger, I'll see a string of messages from him that I've missed for weeks. Nothing inappropriate, just hi, how are you and Merry Christmas etc etc. Initially, I would respond to him if I caught the message, however, as time went on and I kept seeing a string of messages from him whenever I opened Messenger, I started to feel weird. Couldn't tell if he was messaging me to be friendly or if there were romantic intentions behind it. If it were the former, I was working 3 jobs and could barely afford any free time for my family, much less develop a friendship with someone I had worked with 2 years ago in the way that they wanted. If it were the latter, it was obviously inappropriate for me to encourage it in any way. I didn't really know how to handle it, and I stopped replying as much. I participate in local stage stuff, and I started running my own monthly show in 2019 at one of the bars I work at. I made Facebook posts to promote the show, and lo and behold, Dave started showing up to them. It was kind of adding a new level of stress to my shows. He'd come and want to talk to me while I was setting up and dealing with the performers, and when the shows were going on, he was always sitting at a table by himself and seemed really disappointed that I couldn't spend time with him. It was clear to me that he wanted more than friendship. When COVID-19 hit, the show was obviously cancelled. I was sad about losing it, but a little relieved that Dave wouldn't be able to come to my workplace anymore. Throughout quarantine, he's been messaging me consistently. I responded a few times, but I've been actively ignoring him recently. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't give this guy what he wanted, friend-wise or relationship-wise, and it felt cruel to tell him outright that I'm not interested in him romantically when he hadn't expressly stated that he's interested in me. It wasn't right to just ignore him, but I didn't know what else to do. Any response just seemed to give him hope. This all came to a head yesterday. He sent me a Facebook message saying that he was dealing with COVID-19, and that he wanted me to know that if he didn't make it, he'd always really liked me. I didn't open the FB message, I just saw the message in my phone's notification center. I have been stewing about it since. It feels so horrible and guilty. I don't want to encourage him / give him false hope, which I feel will happen if I respond in a friendly way. I don't want to reject him because I don't know how he'd handle it, and if he is sick, I'd just be adding to his misery. Also, this is dark, and I hate thinking about it, but I feel like I'm ignoring reality if I don't acknowledge it. If he is deathly ill right now, I'll feel like the worst person ever no matter what I do. Lead a very sick man on, or reject a very sick man who just made a romantic confession. Dave is a legitimately nice person, and I don't want to upset him, but I don't know if there's a way to deal with this where I don't hurt him. I cannot be the person he wants me to be, and it seems like he's pinned a lot of his hopes onto me from afar. Too long didn't read. My co-worker from 2 years ago, who is differently abled, has been continually reaching out to me in an attempt to develop a relationship and confessed his feelings point blank yesterday because he got COVID-19 and is scared he won't make it through. Does anyone have any advice on how to handle this? I've asked a couple of friends, and they said to just ignore his message, but I think that's the wrong way to go.